So last week we spoke quite a bit about listening, and there was a homework suggested about practicing our listening skills. So what I'd like to do now for the next few minutes is, for those of you who were here last time, to mentally review how you did with this homework if you practice it, right? If you did get a chance to practice listening. And for those who were not here last week, just do a mental review of your listening skills. Like, what are those skills like? Are you good at, do you consider yourself a good listener? And if not, then how you might want to improve that skill. So let's do that for the next few moments of silence. And if you have something that you can write on, you can even just take some notes as to, okay, this is how I did during the week when I was practicing listening. This is how I did. This is how I did well. These are some of the things that I still want to work on. And for those who were not here last time, but you're still sort of trying to figure out where you are in terms of your listening skills, you can also write down where you think you are and what you might like to improve. And it's good to keep these thoughts on our notes, because then we can go back to them and figure out, okay, how we're doing as we continue to practice. How am I developing? Remembering that growth is really seldom straight line. Sometimes you do well, sometimes depending on the circumstances and the context, we may not do so well. That's all part of the process. And also, we don't use this to compare ourselves with other people. We may know people who do this really well. I know people who are much better at listening and communicating than I am. Try not to compare myself to them. Yeah, I compare my growth to where I was when I started and where I am now. And yeah, sometimes you kind of slip back into old habits. And so sometimes you realize, oh yeah, I'm falling back into old habits. It's time to move forward. And then we move forward. The important thing is to um, be honest with ourselves, be gentle with ourselves, and keep trying, not to give up. Yes. And sometimes not giving up is hard, but we can always find the strength to go forward. And one of the things that really help us go forward is if we look at our words as a gift. Yeah. I think Buddha's words were a gift. Buddha's words were a gift to all of us. Yeah. The people that lived at the time that he lived, and all of us who are listening or hearing his words now via our teachers, the books that we're reading, etc. So those words were gifts. We can likewise consider our words as gifts to others. Yeah. Have you ever thought about it like that? Have you ever considered that your words are gifts? Because, it's certainly what they take away from us. When we are interacting, communicating, they're taking away our words. And our words have an impact at that moment, but also later, as those words are remembered. Yeah, so our words good to remember, because people remember what we say, for good or evil, for good or bad. Thank goodness we remember the Buddha's words. I mean, that's such a powerful gift. We're still remembering his words now. Can you imagine if we were to gift words to people that they can remember and benefit from years after we've said them? I know perhaps all of us remember words that somebody spoke to us a long time ago that really made a positive impact on us. I think all of us can remember at least one of those instances when somebody gifted us words that we can still remember that made a good impact on our lives. And I could also almost bet that every one of us also remembers the opposite. That we remember words that somebody might have said a long time ago that we carry with us that had a negative impact, that hurt. Yeah, so we probably have both of those kinds of memories that we carry with us. I certainly do. Yeah. So let's just stop a moment and let's remember. Let's try to remember, what are the kind words that somebody said long ago that benefit us, that we still remember? And we may even remember that exact moment. We may remember the tone of voice. We may remember the entire context and the strength that those words had and the impact. I mean, let's take a moment to see if we can remember that. And let's see, I mean, this is unscripted. I didn't have it in the plan, but if anyone would like to share some beneficial words that somebody spoke a long time ago that made a beneficial impact that you still remember. If anybody would like to share. Okay, I will share. I guess it falls on my lap to share. I remember when I was 20 something. Yeah. And I remember I had been going to college for a long time because I didn't have very much money to pay for college. So I could only take a few classes at a time while I worked full time. And it took me 10 years to get my college degree. And I think it was during the later years, I might have been on year 8 or something of that long 10 years. And I was ready to give up. I was ready to quit. I was desperate, tired, frustrated. It was too hard at some point. Working full time during the day and going to school at night, 10 years, I was just like desperate. And then someone said to me these words I still remember. I was on the phone. I was telling this person I wanted to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. It's too bad, too much. I'm too tired. I want to have some fun in my life. And that person said to me, listen, someday, if you're lucky, you're going to live to be 40 years old. If you're lucky, you live to be 40. So it's your choice. Would you like to be 40 with a degree or without a degree? And I thought about it and I said, oh, I definitely want to be 40 with a degree. And those words got me through the end of that road until I was able to graduate. Those words were a gift, that I still remember. Okay. Bella, you raised your hand. Would you like to share something?
Sure. I don't remember like exactly who said this to me, but it was a long time ago and I was dealing with a lot of stuff in life and they said it's not about what happens to you, it's how you react to it.
Wow, wise words. Wow.
Yeah.
How did you receive those words and what was the impact?
Um, the impact was pretty great because you realize like everybody has like a different life situation. You know, like some people may have disabilities or like be born with it or have illness, or somebody else may be born into wealth, right? And kind of you can't control certain things and you need to just kind of try to learn to accept them and react in the best way you can.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes. Um, I bet you we all have experienced the power of those gifts. Yes. And so I think that if we keep that in mind when we are in the process of communicating with people, it can really have an impact on what we say and how we say it. Yes. Um, yes, there is another raised hand. Haunting, please.
Yes, so I'd like to share this because I have recently just did a reflection of what people said to me. It's more of um, appreciation of how they help me see through my various phases of life. So it's concrete in like black and white, but there's so many. So I'll pick the one that most closest to my heart, that is my late father words. He said it's in an idiom. When the sheep comes to the bridge, it will be straight. It might not make sense in the translation, but what it means is, because I was worried about my future, and he was trying to let me know that if you can't see too far, just be okay, because the path will reveal itself at the right time. It was an emotional one. And strangely, when it was the hardest time, which is maybe 20, 30 years later, he's no longer here. At the toughest time, a friend said that exact word to me, which surprised me really, because it's not a common idiom, but it just somehow come back to remind me.
Oh, very powerful. Very powerful, and very, very wise words from your father and your friend. Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So, what these words have in common, these gifts that we've shared, that people gave us with their words, what they have in common is that those words were uplifting. Yeah, at that moment, when we, all three of us who've spoken and shared, needed some lifting up. Yeah, these people in our lives gave us that lift that we needed with some words, uplifting words. Yes. So first of all, we were very fortunate to have heard those words, to have somebody in our lives that would have been wise enough and kind enough to speak those words to us. Yeah. And so how many times do we do the same for others? How many times? Yeah. So if we're going to be using our time and energy to share, to say something to another person, why not make it something worthwhile that's going to have an impact in their lives, a positive one, now and in the future? Well, words that can heal, rather than just try to say something to fill the time, or something that is neutral. We could just really think about saying something that makes a difference for that person. And here we have to have, and here you say, we have to have some caution. We have to have some caution, because while we want to say something that is uplifting, something that is positive, we want to be genuine when we do that. We want to be genuine without irony or manipulation. Because sometimes we try to manipulate people with our words, especially if we perceive that that person has a need, they're in a precarious moment in their lives, and here we have an opportunity to make them do whatever we want them to do, or to try to influence what they're doing because we think we know better for them. And so we have to really explore our motivation beforehand. or even as we're speaking, just search for and be honest with ourselves about, okay, what am I trying to do here? Am I really focusing on the needs of that person, or I'm just coming from a point of view of my needs, trying to sort of give them some honey while at the same time just trying for them to do what I want them to do. So we have to walk that fine line of trying to be helpful, uplifting, coming from the heart, genuine, without slipping into manipulation, irony, being disingenuous. Yeah. So it's really being disciplined with our speech. And remembering what we talked about that very first class about what is correct speech, right speech. Excuse me. Right speech is speech that is, it is a speech that is truthful, timely, beneficial, and kind. That's the formula that we talked about. And if we keep that in mind, that will be our guiding posts, our guardrails for our speech, okay? Truthful, timely, beneficial, and kind. This should be like something that we memorize. And then our words would be positive and can be considered gifts. And have you ever considered what's the ripple effect? The ripple effect of words. Encouraging words have an amazing ripple effect. In my case, in the example that I gave about the situation that happened to me, what was the ripple effect? I was able to graduate. And that had ramifications just beyond my graduation, in my life and other people's around me. And it has some effect here because I've shared the example with you. So even over here, how many years after the fact? I don't know. How many years after the fact? At least 2 decades, maybe definitely more than 2 decades after the fact. I'm still sharing that example, and it's still having a ripple effect because I shared it with you. So that's, and talk about the Buddhist words. 2,600 years. We're still feeling the ripple effects of the Buddhist words. Yeah. So that's amazing. And along with these gifts that we have received from people in our lives who've just been at the right time, at the right moment with right speech directed at us that we've received from them. Yeah. Do we appreciate that? To what extent do we show appreciation or feel gratitude for those instances, right? Because when we appreciate something, we're more likely to want to do it. We're more likely to want to imitate something, some behavior that we appreciate, that we find useful, and that we like. So when we appreciate and value these gifts that we receive from others, we are more likely to give those to other folks in our life. And there is a whole spiritual practice associated with being grateful, with showing gratitude, with showing appreciation. Have we gone to those folks and say, hey, thank you? Thank you so much. At some point, you told me these words and they made an impact. And they helped me so much. At a very crucial moment in my life, you said this. And we can be very specific. You said this. And wow, thank you. And sometimes one of the sometimes people can be, they can tell us words that are hard to hear. Those are also gifts that are hard to hear. Some truths that are hard to hear for us, but that have such a positive impact that we also, then have the opportunity to say, hey, thank you. You helped me see something in me that perhaps I needed to change, or something that I needed to recognize that I hadn't recognized. And even though at that moment it was hard for me to hear it, it really has been a gift, because I've been able to look at myself more clearly, see where I need to improve, change, grow. And we can make it a daily practice in our lives. Hey, I am going today to just be grateful and appreciate all those words that people have told me that have helped me, because they have uplifted my mood, or they've given me direction, or, they've pointed to something that I needed to change. And if we do that every day, wow, that's an amazing practice. And guess what? By doing that every day, our fear of hearing things that we don't want to hear or that we don't like to hear is going to go down. We're actually going to increase our acceptance of things that may be hard to hear, because perhaps they touch on sensitive spaces in our heart. Being grateful for the Buddha's teachings, being grateful for all of our teachers who've explained the Buddha's words to us, also falls into that practice of appreciation and gratitude. Another practice that I've taken very seriously, that I really, really like. It's not easy, but I think I've become a little bit more comfortable with it, because I've had to do it a lot, a lot. It's the practice of apologizing. I've had to apologize for a lot. So I made that a practice, and I derive a lot of pleasure from it. It's like, when I am able to apologize, even though it might have been so hard, even though I might have tried to avoid it, and then finally I get the courage to apologize, I celebrate that. I celebrate that. Because it really is a sign of growth, of maturity. It's like, okay, finally I'm maturing. Finally, I'm becoming an adult. I can apologize. I can recognize, hey, I made a mistake. Yes. So we can use our words to apologize. Yeah, and how do we do that? I mean, nobody teaches us how to apologize. It's like we have to sort of figure it out on our own. It's like, okay, throw yourself in the river and see if you can float or swim or something. Yeah, but nobody tells us. Yeah, so this is about skillful apologizing and repairing. Skillfully apologizing and repairing the harm that we have done with our words. And so it's really kind of an art form. It's like, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for what I said without trying to defend myself, without trying to justify myself. Because that's sort of, if I start justifying and defending and giving reasons why and finding out excuses for my behavior, that just sort of pollutes, I think. It's a bit of a pollution in the action of apologizing. So I apologize, and all I have to do is, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I wish I'd done something differently. I wish I'd said something different, but at the time, this was the best that I can do. I am so sorry. And then we realize, we don't have to make that about ourselves. The apology is really not about us, but it's about honoring and confronting or accepting the fact that we harm somebody with our words. We harm somebody with our actions. Realizing I'm sorry, I know I harmed you. I know I hurt you. And so we validate their experience. It's not about me, it's about their experience. And we might want to ask, how did you feel? What kind of an impact? Help me understand the impact of my actions or my words. I want to try to really not do this again. And all the while, we realize that an apology is not an indictment on us. It's not a sign of being guilty or dysfunctional or broken or any of the other labels that we can put on ourselves that are very damaging. But it's simply the fact that we made a mistake. We're we're in the learning process. We're in the growth process. We're on the learning curve here, and like any other person, we also make mistakes. And so it's about being gentle with ourselves and being gentle with the other person that we're apologizing and accepting whatever reaction they're gonna have while we're apologizing. Yes. And having the courage and the strength to hear what they're going to say. If they're going to say something, I want to hear how this was for you. Can you share? Are you open to share how this was for you? But also, if that person doesn't want to share, that's fine. If they don't want to accept our apology, that's fine. We don't have to push them to accept our apology. We don't have to push them to forgive us, right? The important thing is for us to forgive ourselves. That's the important thing. Do we forgive ourselves? And do we accept that the person is not obligated to accept our apology? They're not even obligated to forgive us. They can hold their grudge, and that's their work to do. Yeah? That's their work to do. We don't want to control that or have any influence on that. They have the right to their own process. And they can process too at their own pace, with their own tools. But the apology restores our good standing with ourselves and is restores the relationship, even if they don't accept the apology, even if they do not speak with us anymore. We have done the repair job. And that's something that we can take with ourselves. We did the repair work. Then we leave them be. Give them time and space to do their own repair work that they're going to need to do for certain. Then maybe at some point, that person can come back and say, okay, I get it. No problem. I accept your apology. But we don't expect that. We don't force it. We don't ask it of them. We just do it from our side. We just do it from our side. But it's important for us that we understand how our words or our actions impacted the person. Even if the person does not want to share it, we want to have an idea. We want to be able to think about it, about what was the effect on that person. Sort of like putting ourselves on their shoes. That's learning for us. There's a lot of learning in that. And believe me, in my own experience, to hear when I've heard from them what the impact of my actions and my words was, it's very painful. It's excruciatingly painful to hear when a person is describing the harm they've suffered as a result of your actions and words. It's something that's very hard to sit there and listen to. But boy, is that is very, I can say, healing for both the person who's sharing it with you, who received the harm, and for you, the person who created the harm. This is what restorative justice is all about, if you heard about it. It's having the person who caused the harm have a conversation and a dialogue with those he or she harmed, about each other's situation, why, the whys, and the impact. That's used very much in restorative justice. And as a result of that, there's been many reparation and forgiveness that was possible because of that, of the person who was legally liable and the person that they harmed. So, but it takes a lot of courage on both sides. On both sides, it takes a lot of courage. It's very difficult. Yeah. And how can we make amends? Like changing our behavior. This is what happens in restorative justice too. The person who committed the wrong, he tries to change their behavior. And so we can do that too, okay? We're gonna make a commitment to ourselves to change the behavior, change the words that we're using, change our actions. And it's not really for the purpose to show the other person that we've changed. Yeah, we're not going to show the other person we've changed, but rather we have to show ourselves. It's ourselves who need to know that we're capable, that we can change, that we can grow. There's a great deal of satisfaction, self-satisfaction, when you can say, oh, wow, I've changed, even if it is a tiny little bit. Uh, so forgiveness then comes when we can say, okay, I did all of this and I forgive myself now. Now I can't let it go. So forgiveness is letting go of that mistake, not holding it against ourselves, not carrying that on your back as something bad that you did and how could you, just like, okay, I'm gonna let that go. I've done all that I could. I've thought about it. I acknowledged my mistake. I apologized. I listened to the other person. I connected with that person. Whether they forgave me or not, whether they accepted my apology or not, that's beside the point. I did that. I did the whole follow-up. Now I'm ready to let it go. I'm ready to forgive myself. I'm ready to continue with my growth, but I can let go. And so in letting go, we free ourselves from being the perpetrator of the harm, but also we free the other person from being the victim. Yeah. We free that sort of, we free them from being the recipient. And let them and accept them regardless of where they are with this process. We accept them and we forgive whatever reaction they might have had, and we let that go. And we're clean. We're clean. Once we get to that point, we're clean. And of course, if we're practicing Buddhist, what we do some purification practice around that whole thing. We do some purification practice just to kind of help us move that energy through. And then we're clean. And we hold the other person clean too. And that's just so, that's a relief. Really is. Really is. And we're running out of time, so the very last thing I want to talk about is about silence. Silence. I love silence. And I find that there's a lot of people that cannot deal with silence. There's a lot of people who, when confronted with silence, feel the need to just say something because they cannot stand silence. It's like some kind of a compulsion or fear. We have to be constantly bombarding each other with sound because we can't stand the silence. I have people that come here and I have to tell them, can you please give me some moments of silence? I cannot stand hearing you talk 24/7. Please. I need silence. Have you ever felt that? How have you ever looked at how comfortable you are with silence? In the conversation, all of a sudden everybody goes quiet. Are you one of those folks who feel the need to say something, whatever comes to you, so that the silence is broken? Yeah. Sometimes silence is the kindest choice. And sometimes silence can be comfortable, and for many people, silence is uncomfortable. And sometimes, if you are feeling and experiencing tension in an exchange, the best thing you can do is silence. Why don't we just take a 5-minute silence and then just be with it for 5 minutes in silence? With whatever you're feeling, whatever I'm feeling, let's just be with it in silence. Or if you feel in a conversation that you're about to say something that you know is not going to be positive, you can just say, I need some silence for a moment to just reconnect with myself, collect my thoughts. Can we just have that for a moment? And then you can work with your thoughts during the silence. You can breathe, you can focus on your breath, you can, sort of reconnect with your motivation of to be of benefit, to speak only positive words that are truthful, timely, beneficial, and kind. Also, silence can be very fruitful if we use it wisely. And sometimes we can just say, hey, you know what? I really don't have anything helpful to say right now. Let's be silent for a moment. Because it's so hard for us. I mean, really, it's so hard for us to admit that we don't have anything helpful to say. I mean, that just admitting that takes some courage. Because we always want to say something that makes us sound wise and smart. So the last thing in the world we want to do is have to admit that I don't have anything useful to add or to say. That's scary. And believe me, if you know at what point to keep silence, people will tell you anything. I find if I keep silent in a conversation, people will reveal the most astonishing things because they are not comfortable with silence and they're just going to say anything to break it. So in a conversation, be silent. You will get more than you bargained for. You could possibly get more than you bargained for just by just being silent. Some people may even interpret the silence as you're being rude. If you're not engaging, if you're not speaking, people may interpret that as you're being rude. Yeah. And we have to know, we have to learn to be comfortable with other people's silence and also with our own silence. This is double the work. We have to be comfortable with our silence, our need for silence, and then other people's silence. I respect that when we may want to talk, somebody else might want to be in silence. We have to respect that too and acknowledge that, okay, well, I feel a need to talk right now, but if you right now need silence, then I'm going to have to work with that. I'm going to have to work with my need because you need silence. So Okay. Okay. So this is all of the material for tonight, but we do have some exercises. Yeah. And one of the things that we can practice for about 10 or 15 minutes is to, if you have pen and paper handy, write notes of appreciation to different people in your life. About very specific situations that they have that have been beneficial to you, qualities and actions that have impacted you positively. Very specific. We're not just going to give this general praise. Oh, you're wonderful. You're just so great. And I love your smile. And da, 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 da. No, we're going to think about specific instances, like the examples we gave earlier, about the words that helped us. And also practice perhaps some gratitude and appreciation for people who told you things that were difficult for you to hear, but that nonetheless had a very positive impact in your life. So do kind of both and just try to practice that appreciation and gratitude. Let's do that for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll go to the next exercise. Okay. Well, let's switch gears a little bit for the next 10 or so minutes. Let's switch gears. And what we're going to do is that we're going to remember an exchange with someone that was the recipient of our unskillful speech, someone that we might have harmed with unskillful speech. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring that person to mind. And mentally, we're going to say to them some healing words. Some healing words. Perhaps something that we wish we would have told them instead of what we actually did say. So we're going to send them some healing words. We're going to send them some healing, loving kindness. And then after we do that for some time, we're going to then forgive ourselves. Forgive ourselves for that particular incident and maybe others that may be bothering us. Yes, of what we said that was harmful. And then we can set our intention to be more skillful in future instances. Okay, so let's do that for the next 10 minutes or so. Okay. So this is going to conclude our class on communications. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And I just wish that you can accomplish your goals with your communication in the future and continue to develop this skill, which is, I think, a lifelong process. So thank you very much.